We brought in our next guest to hear what he's expecting. Please welcome to the show America's accountant. That'll be Dan Geltrude. Dan, thanks for being on the show. Am I right to be a little bit skeptical there?
100%. So if you ask me what I would expect based upon feeling, common sense, feeling of the market, the feeling of going grocery shopping, you have it. You would expect inflation to be perhaps ticking up. However, in a world full of surprises, I'm not so sure that we're going to have that. And it goes right to the point that you're making as far as the Bureau of Labor Statistics changing things around and saying, you know what? That formula we used to use, that doesn't really work anymore. We need this new formula. And based upon where this new formula will take us, I could guarantee you you don't make a change in your calculations unless it's going to be favorable to you. So although I would think that inflation should go up, I would not be surprised if they do go down.
Well, that's one of my worries. And, you know, we had that shocking 517,000 revision number last Friday or 2 Fridays ago for that non-farm payroll number. So there has been a few things that have surprised us. And here I'll go one step further, and I can tie this in with the Super Bowl, but with Philadelphia, right? The Philly Fed Index took to task the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who gives us this CPI because they overstated jobs for the last quarter last year. By about 1 million jobs. I mean, so the BLS has got some explaining to do, right? And if that's going to be the case where they're changing the derivation, now this government is really good at changing definitions. Now they're going to change the derivation. And this CPI, this Consumer Price Index numbers that we often talk about, and it's something like they're dropping off the last 2 years. So if that's a hotter read than they were, then obviously that's going to bring it down more than expected. And it's going to be very difficult to compare this number to the last number.
Well, exactly. I mean, once you start changing these things, where's the comparison year over year, month over month, whatever the case is? Look, I think the BLS could certainly be shortened appropriately to BS, because that's what I think this is all going to be. If we look at what's happening in the world, Scott, and it goes back to just a couple basic thoughts here. Supply and demand. Demand is up, supply's down. We're going to have inflation. Until those two things get in line, the Fed taking the position, we have to smash down demand in order to meet the two, right? So you could say, well, there's been some success there if you believe the numbers, because inflation is coming down, but at what cost? Scott, at what cost? The destruction of the economy. And then let's just look at another point of view here. As our relations with China continue to be strained with who's flying balloons over where, right? What happens if China decides they're going to start holding back on bringing products to market, right? Supply and demand. What if they decide to lower supply? Then what happens? Well, then U.S. consumers are going to feel a lot of pain. And on top of that, remember this, a lot of prescription drugs are made in China. So it's not just the economic hurt. You could have some real hurt being applied to the United States. So it's not just all the numbers. There's a lot of things going on in the world that we have to be conscious of.
And to add to that, maybe they stop buying as many bonds. And if they're not a big buyer of bonds, our bonds, right? That's where we get a lot of this money. That could see rates go up too if those buyers stop and bond, prices tank, and that means yields go up. So that could be another thing. So we could find that you've got folks fighting over each other at Walmart for goods, and at the same time, interest rates are going up when nobody can get a hold of buy anything. I mean, there is something to be said for. I mean, we have. You've seen the TV programs like I have. People are openly talking about what a conflict with China would look like, and we are so intertwined. When it comes to the monetary system, it would be bad.
It would be bad on a lot of levels. I can't even go down the road of discussing what military action between our two countries would look like. No. So I'm not going to entertain that. But if we do end up in an economic war with China, which, you know, we're certainly seeing signs of that, as opposed to wiping out the human race, how could you do it a little bit easier? Well, you do it economically, and China shuts off the spigots, or they decide they're not going to buy our debt. What hurt does that put on us? And the answer is a lot.
It's a big hurt, a very big hurt. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Nice tie, by the way, Dan. It didn't go unnoticed. Dan Geltrude coming to us from Nutley, New Jersey. Thanks for being on the show here today. All right. Now